Love is our true divine nature, and our heart serves as the intersection of the spiritual and physical, connecting our soul with our body as the conduit for anchoring our divinity onto the earth plane. Embodying our divinity is the key to our ascension and to manifesting our highest destiny in this life. The teachings of the heart are alchemy. Join spiritual mentor and channel Jennifer Spohr each week on a sacred journey to lift the veil to remembering your divinity and meet other beautiful souls who are living the path of the awakened heart. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome as a guest today Jordan Youkilis. Jordan is the host of Entangled, the podcast exploring the science of consciousness, the true nature of reality, and what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience. Jordan is a founding partner at Key Investment Partners, a cannabis-focused private equity fund, and is obtaining a master's degree in consciousness and human potential at Maharishi International University. Welcome, Jordan. I'm excited to have you.
Thanks, Jennifer. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna have a fun chat today, and for everyone who's listening, Jordan and I actually connected because I was a guest recently on his show, and so I'm super excited to continue our conversation here. Jordan, I would love for you to share with us more about, what you're up to, like what brought you to where you're at today and with your interests in spirituality and obtaining your degree and your adventures with this private equity fund. You just have like a lot of things going on, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a fun ride, and I have to imagine, like many on the spiritual path, it's taken a lot of unexpected twists and turns. But I've also found those have been the most exciting and best parts of it all, right?
Mhm.
Um, so kicking it off, I grew up in Cincinnati, and I grew up with I'd say generally kind of materialist view of reality. Right? I didn't disbelieve God, but it wasn't really part of like growing up so much. I mean, I had a bar mitzvah, but like my parents, like they were religious, but they, I think, lost those ties over time. My mom was Catholic, my dad was Jewish as well, so I think that also just made it a little bit more complicated. So anyway, I had a bar mitzvah, but again, I think it was more like tradition, ceremony versus really feeling that direct connection with God. And I think as I got older, just kind of bought the whole kind of mainstream consensus version of science, and that, if you believe in science, that's antithetical to God. And so, just didn't, I'd say, have much of a connection or even think about it all that much for the next, as I grew up until I got to be 31. That would have been 2021. So after the first year of the pandemic, right? And so at this point in time, um, I had a career in traditional finance, so doing private equity. Had started my own company called Key Investment Partners back in 2018, focusing on cannabis-specific investments within the private equity world. So anyway, I was getting to a point where that company was kind of getting to a more steady point in its growth. Um, COVID was challenging for the business at first, when that hit, but actually it ended up being good for the cannabis industry. So things were going well on the work front, but I think, again, just like COVID had really thrown a wrench into all my plans and just kind of made me rethink about a lot of things in my outlook in life. And then early 2021, had the good fortune of coming across a documentary called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And this documentary is focused on metaphysics and these kind of spiritual concepts, that kind of helped me, coming from that more science forward background, helped me recognize that metaphysics and, spirituality and God and science weren't antithetical. In fact, they were one and the same. And this documentary, also really got into uh, the concept of what is consciousness. It was very rooted in Vedic philosophy, which is a big part of why I ended up enrolling at MIU, and just the nature of consciousness. And I'd had the benefit of living in Colorado, which has always been a pretty psychedelic forward state. And so I'd had a few experiences with psychedelics. And so even though the documentary didn't talk about that at all, it really resonated with some of those experiences I'd had. And, I could really feel my third eye chakra resonating, even though I didn't know what that meant at that time, right? I'd never had that experience really before, or at least, not aware of it in the waking state. And so anyway, about a week after I first saw that documentary, I decided to take a lot higher dose of psychedelics, really just kind of explore some of these new ideas I'd been exposed to. And then I've had, for that first time ever, that experience of ego dissolution. And in that moment, I had that experience of the universe is eternal. I am eternal. There is no death. There is no need to fear. All is love. And it really, that direct experience of the divine helped to really validate a lot of those concepts that I'd been introduced to. And so I've just been off to the races ever since.
I have so many questions. So I don't have I've not gone down that same path in terms of that contemplation while having tried a psychedelic. What is the difference? I'd love to know, what is the difference between having tried that while having that contemplation and then having that understanding without the psychedelic?
It's a really good question. I think before I'd had that contemplation, when I'd done psychedelics, it was more in a recreational setting, with friends. Maybe we were out camping, maybe we were partying, maybe we were going to a concert, right? And so while I always had good experiences, I've never had the experience of like a bad trip. I've had parts of trips where I they were challenging for sure, but never had a bad trip per se. But I did have one trip in that pre-time where I probably just had a high dose where I experienced something that I didn't have the frame of reference to even understand what it was, but it was incredible, and I was just traveling through the cosmos. And so I think it was that particular time that really resonated with me when I saw that documentary. But yeah, I mean, so I have worked with psychedelics quite a bit since that happened, but in a totally different context, right? And predominantly to facilitate meditation. And I mean, I think meditation in combination with psychedelics has really profound potential when used in a safe setting for sure. And that's one of the things that I really try to advocate, right? And I see a lot of the great work that's being done in the psychedelics community more broadly, and a lot of it's focused on trauma and stress relief, and all that is fantastic. And I think we need to keep exploring that. I also, however, don't want to get caught in the situation where we still limit the potential of what these medicines can do for us, and recognize that you can go even they have potential for more than that, right? For spiritual evolution, for for connecting, for unlocking abilities of human consciousness that we have always had and just weren't aware of.
Yeah, I personally haven't. I mean, I haven't taken the opportunity to delve very deep to say that I could speak as an expert on the topic. I and I'm sure everyone's experience is unique. I do want to say I could see how with some others' experiences how it could aid in releasing resistance. Because we do have so much in the human experience. We do have
Yeah.
so much programming, so much societal programming, and in terms of limiting our beliefs and everything. And so I could see how that would really open someone up, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally agree. And it's interesting you bring that up, because we were talking about the university I'm at, Maharishi International. It's all rooted in Vedic science, so the Vedic tradition of India. And namely that consciousness is fundamental to our universe and to the human physiology. And my university they also run the Transcendental Meditation program globally, with the core thesis of Transcendental Meditation being that through the practice of meditation, your nervous system naturally alleviates stress. And I think that's very similar to what happens in the psychedelic experience. And so I'm very interested personally in really understanding those two phenomenon, the meditation experience and the psychedelic experience, and kind of how they overlap, and what we can learn from those two modalities.
Yeah, I'm actually really fascinated by that. I'm really fascinated by that. And then how does a psychedelic act in regard to actually tapping into yourself at a deeper intuitive level?
Yeah yeah I mean, I can tell you, I've had, a number of the most profound experiences of my life have been with the assistance of psychedelics. And I think for me, they enable you to connect with forms of intelligence that are always here, but are not maybe
Mhm.
accessible to the majority of folks in their everyday experience. And that if you can, and I would recommend people take precautions, because just as there are higher forms of intelligence that are always here, there are also lower forms of intelligence. So I think, I don't recommend people get reckless with these or anything, but I just mean that to say, I think it's if you can approach it with a open mind, and view them as tools to maybe learn from divine inspiration in ways that we're not usually accustomed to, right? Not like you and I talking to each other, but actually communication through thought, or communication through emotion or memory. Then I think that there's a lot to learn in that state.
Yeah, I find this so interesting. I am going to study this after our conversation because as a as a channel, right, I can tap into higher frequencies of intelligence without the aid of anything.
Mhm.
Now, did I come out of the womb doing that? Maybe I did, and I didn't remember that initially. As with most of us, right? We come into this world with like a veil of forgetfulness, and then we
Yeah.
just remember. That's our whole journey here, learning and remembering who we are. But yeah, I'm super interested to understand that because I'm able to tap into that without anything.
Yeah.
Given I have been doing meditation for 15 years, right? So it's definitely that journey of opening up is a lot like working a muscle and showing up consistently to it. And like I said before, I do see, without knowing about the use of psychedelics, I do see at a top level how it could be helpful in helping people who are, you know, um, experiencing resistance to opening up. And I want to touch on what you said as well about higher intelligence and lower intelligence, which is so true. And whether it's psychedelics, microdosing, whether it's just going into meditation, setting an
Mhm.
intention to channel, going into your Akashic records, or whatever else you're doing, it is important to consciously set an intention to only connect with the highest frequency light intelligence, so that you are essentially, protecting yourself from any potential infiltration.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I first had that awakening experience, I definitely was, hitting it hard with psychedelics, and I wouldn't recommend it to do it that way. I think I don't want to encourage people to use it as a crutch, right? Or try to use it as a shortcut. I think that's the culture we live in. It's like kind of like, when you drink to get drunk and to get wasted, right? And in the cannabis industry, the products that we grow now are pure THC, super high potency, right? That's never what it was in the past, right? So I don't want us to follow in that same path with psychedelics, in particular because, while I don't think they have necessarily physical risk, they certainly have very serious psychological risk, especially if you're taking it in the wrong environment or with the wrong individuals near you. So I don't want people to use them as a crutch, like I said. But I also think that, when used in the appropriate context with the appropriate knowledge and expertise by adults, that these can be very effective tools, and we shouldn't cut off our nose to spite our face, and kind of throw these out because there's this kind of history over the last 50 years, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's everyone's experience is unique. It's smart to be informed, whatever path you decide to choose, right? To discern in whatever those choices are. Absolutely. I don't think we should be quick to eliminate options just based off of past experience. I think some of that has gotten a bad label. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
yeah, I have spoken with some other experts, and yeah, I think it's just something that is just determining what's best for you and your path, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
With all that you're pursuing, with your degree and your studies and everything, where are you headed? What is your what are you most passionate about? What's your highest vision that you have for what you're doing with all this amazing knowledge?
It's a great question. And I'll tell you, when I started the podcast, it was right around when I started the master's program, and I said to myself, right, I'm going to commit to these next 3 years being just god awful brutal, but like I'll be in a really good spot on the other side of it. So let's power through. So this is the last year of my program, which I've loved, but I'm definitely excited to have a little bit of personal time back, right? So to your question, I'm really excited about the platform that I'm building with Entangled, the podcast that you're so kind and generous to come on. That was so much fun. So I think continuing to build out that platform, really build a community through that as a way to continue to connect with amazing people, to really explore this incredible field of consciousness. And then longer term, I would love to play a bigger role, I think, in higher education. I've really loved learning a consciousness rooted Vedic science based master's program, and I think that there's just so much potential to reform higher education as a whole. And then specifically, I truly believe that we're undergoing this seismic shift in science where we move from this materialistic reductionist paradigm to a consciousness-based paradigm.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to transform every aspect of science: healthcare, interstellar travel, telepathic communications, time travel, right? Like these things are not crazy science fiction anymore. They're here. And so I'm just so excited about what the future holds. So I don't know. I wish there were more hours in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe that too. The economy as a whole, it's so interesting because I was just having a similar conversation with someone else just earlier today about this, to say what an exciting, we're living in a time right now, you and I, that 50 years from now, right, is going to be referenced.
Yeah.
I mean, we're within a few years during our lifetime here, we're going to actually see, I believe, these changes take place. I mean, our economy is going to totally change. And I even believe, I feel more than think that even a lot of the government infrastructures and those things are going to be changing as well. The way that leaders are appointed and
I
elected.
totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you that same question then. Where do you see yourself, and what's your vision?
That's a great question that you're asking me. So I would want to start by answering this question to say that we go through several evolutions on our journey here, even within one incarnation, right? And I've certainly gone through several, and I'm actually in the process of going through another one where I am continuing on with my podcast, and my vision is for, that to continue reaching more people. I am actually switching directions currently to go back to longer term private mentorship with working with entrepreneurs and CEOs who need support in deeper embodiment of the spiritual gifts, right? The consciousness, the knowledge that they already have. They need support in more deeply embodying that and integrating that into their businesses and their careers. So that's a direction that I am heading in to make an impact while also creating space to work on some books. So I've actually started channeling, working with a higher intelligence to channel creation protocols that are actually focused specifically around divine origin type of stuff, but centered around supporting people having a human experience to master creation in human body. So I'm literally in the process of creating that now, channeling those teachings
Wow.
and bringing them forward into the form of a book. So that's actually, and then speaking about those teachings as well. So that's the direction I'm headed in currently, and I see that evolving as well.
Mhm.
And I also see I feel myself getting more into more humanitarian type of work too, and more international travel. But yeah, I can speak to that's the latest evolution of my work.
I love it. Where's top of the travel list?
Oh my gosh, you know what? The top of the travel list, it's really between 3 places right now, and when I
Uh-huh.
actually go to book my next trip, I'll tune into which place it is, but it's France. It is the UK, specifically Glastonbury, and Greece.
Awesome.
I have really strong, just with guides that I work with, but also really strong like different lifetime past life connections to all of those locations. I also spend, I don't know if we talked about this on your show, I also spend time working with the earth as well. So a lot of times when I'm being called somewhere, it's not just for my own leisure and enjoyment, which I do experience that, of course. It's also because I'm being called to do some type of work with the land
Yeah.
there. So
Wow. Do you find that when you channel like the connection stronger if you're at a specific like space, right? Like a geographic. You get what I'm saying?
so in my experience, the geographic location has not made a difference. It's more
Uh-huh.
about my ability to focus and to drop into that space. And also, um, so channeling for a client, in a session, let's say in their records, is different than channeling these very high frequency beings that are sharing sacred texts with me that are going into a book. I have to be very intentional about it, and I only spend a certain amount of time each day doing it. And I have to pay a lot of attention to my physical body and how I feel.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, our physical body that's our conduit. So,
Yeah.
the cliche saying about health is wealth, it's not cliche. It's like very true. It's like we're a soul, we're an eternal being of light having this human experience, and the part of the goal, right? Part of us being here is to be fully present with this knowingness, right? That we're a soul having a human experience, and taking what we're being guided to at a soul level and integrating that through our physical body, like bringing that into form.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with the books, the Book of Ra?
Yes.
Okay, so is that kind of like your experience channeling and then writing it down? Is that
It is, except for I am not trans channeling. So
okay?
there is conscious channeling and trans channeling. So I'm consciously aware of what I'm saying when I'm channeling. And so it's different for different people. Okay. So Abraham Hicks, Ra is an example. Abraham Hicks is a well-known example of a trans channel. Abraham, the collective consciousness refers to themselves as Abraham, and they use Esther Hicks as a channel. For me, I receive these messages, this information through my claircognizance. So I'm literally able to open a channel in my field and intentionally invite them to come in, and then I am typing, like writing,
Wow.
typing all the information that's coming through.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe, that all of us have these innate abilities, and some people are more naturally tuned into them than others. And that so many of us are barely scratching the surface of our potential. Like you were talking earlier about telepathic communication and communicating through emotion. Absolutely. Communicating through sound. There's just so much. It's very exciting that we're really coming back to that. And I say coming back, right? Because it's not new. It's always been there. It's always been within us.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you find that women are typically more like naturally attuned, or not
Great
necessarily?
question. I
Yeah.
feel like we're turning the tables a little bit here.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll stop messing.
That's fine. This is a great conversation. I mean, that's a great question. At a blanket level, okay, at a planetary level, collective level, I will say yes. And only because of our societal constructs, okay, only because of our patriarchal, societal constructs, meaning that most men have been conditioned, right, to believe that they're the stronger one, they're the provider, they're the doer, right? And women, people who identify as female by nature are more receiving and intuitive.
Yeah, more. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's why I would say yes to that question, that's just at the very highest level. The masculine, men, people who identify as male, have all the same abilities to tap into themselves intuitively, right? And men also have within them the divine feminine. This is ascension, and that topic can be, and it's 3:33. I'm looking at my clock right now, so funny. Ascension can be a whole other conversation, right? But to say that our evolution, our journey of learning and remembering here, is also about harmony and balance. And each one of us is created with a masculine side and a feminine side. So it's really about bringing those two into balance, and also redefining, kind of realigning our relationship with each aspect to understand the divine truth of what they really are, right? The masculine is a great example of this, because the masculine has been, well, the feminine has been too, but to use the masculine as an example here, to say that it's been very inverted, the definition of the masculine, it's very imbalanced, and that it's about doing more to receive more. And the masculine is about taking action, but the sacred masculine only takes action in devotion to the divine feminine.
Mhm.
So the divine feminine, when you're in balance with yourself, with both of those aspects, you're tapped into your feminine self, your intuitive self, your creative self. So you're creating, you're tuning into your intuition, and
Mhm.
then the masculine aspect of you is then taking very intentional action in devotion to bringing that to life.
Yeah. Wow. That was beautiful.
Yeah. It is really beautiful. It is really beautiful, but that's what we're essentially all on the journey here to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, any other questions?
Yeah. I think that was yeah, just I'll let you take back your podcast. Thank you so much.
No, those were great questions. I'm loving this conversation so much. And Jordan, what does living with an awakened heart mean to you?
Yeah, I love that. I love that question. I love the name of the podcast too. I think for me, it's recognizing that our I th- let me think. There's a lot of ways I could answer that. So I think that for me, it's been about recognizing that our consciousness and our human experience is much more than the mental consciousness. Although that is certainly important, I think that we have a heart consciousness that um, we've been we've been disconnected from, and now that we're in this period of great reawakening, that's where the momentum for a brighter future is going to come from, right? And I think once we can figure out how to align heart and mind with soul and spirit, the future for humanity is infinite.
I love that. Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Jordan, if someone's feeling guided to connect with you to learn more about your show and what you're up to, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So the podcast is on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. It's called Entangled, one word, by Jordan Youkilis. And then if you go to entangledpodcast.substack.com, that's my main hosting site. And for every episode, I write an essay at the end of it. And so I publish that essay both in written form at the end of each podcast and also just as an essay on Substack if you prefer your content in written form too. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I highly recommend everyone definitely follow Jordan's show and connect with him more over there. As you can hear and see, he asks fantastic questions. We had a great conversation when I was a guest on his show as well, so definitely tune in over there. And Jordan, as we get ready to wind down here, what else are you feeling guided to bring forward in this now moment?
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention is that, as you were talking about government structures, I fully agree with that too. I think that as much as the metaphysical stuff is and spiritual stuff is super exciting, I think the more maybe even immediate and practical potential for the future is, really getting a government that once again operates of, by, and for the people. And so I would just encourage your listeners that civic responsibility is important. If you want to build a better future for kids and for the next generation, take action yourself. Get involved politically, run for office, or join a campaign and someone you believe in. And that's how we turn our country around and turn our planet around.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for a wonderful, fascinating, and interesting conversation. I know I have some great takeaways from our conversation today, too. So enjoyed having you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer. This was a blast.
Thank you for listening to Path of the Awakened Heart. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or pathoftheawakenedheart.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about living with an awakened heart and navigating your ascension journey, visit me at jenniferspore.com.